This is an oral history with George Barrie, and the date is September 11th, 2003. And we're talking in George Barrie's home in Craig, Colorado. And this is an oral history for the Carnegie Library and for the Rocky Flats Cold War Museum. So, as I said, the first question, George, is when and where were you born?
Well, I was born in Denver, Colorado. I'm a native all my life. I've never lived anywhere for 48 years now. And I went to Bear Creek High back in the 70s and went through quite a few different jobs, anywhere from gas station to warehouse to tow truck driving to many other things, and got into a pre-apprentice program through National Tool and Die at Red Rocks Community College back in the 70s, and got my tools of the trade that I could at that point, and worked 40 hours at a job shop, and then went to school for 20 hours at Red Rocks Tech School. And then I went on my own from there. It wasn't a 4-year indentured program or anything. They didn't have anything like that back in the 70s that I was access to. Went to work down in the Inglewood job shop world, as we would say, for machining. It was a pretty close-knit group. There wasn't a whole lot of places around, and everybody kind of knew everybody. Is like it's a little own town type thing where, you know, Joe Blow knew where the other guy was working pretty much all the time. I went around from shop to shop learning what I could, get a quarter more an hour here, quarter more an hour there. Learning the trade, mostly aerospace work. Then I had seen a newspaper ad, I believe it was Denver Post, for a large expansion of workers to be hired at the Rocky Flats plant. Well, at this time I had no idea what a Rocky Flats plant really meant.
You didn't really know.
It didn't trigger what it really was, you know. So I saw the paper and just kind of asked around and saw that there was inspectors and there was machinist openings and all kinds of different openings. They were just a total natural attrition of all the 50s on to up to 1960s. All these people were getting in the years and ready to retire, so they were looking to replace that attrition.
That would have been what year about?
1978, 79, around there. And I let it go for a few months, and I had seen the article again at this shop that I worked. It just happened to be laying around, so I read it again and decided to call, and they said they were still hiring, and so I went ahead and went up to the plant and filled an application out, and had no idea what was going on then, and couldn't go around really to see anything because it was classified areas. So I did that, and I had to go through a Q clearance, a civilian Q clearance. It was non-military. And
now, you had not been in the service, had you?
Well, I was in the Navy, but that wasn't correlated in any way with Rocky Flats. I forgot to mention that I was in the Navy in a short period of time, and had came back to Colorado after that, and that's when I got into the machining trade. Then, like I was saying, I had filled my application out, went through my Q clearance papers, and I was awaiting to hear. Well, we're talking almost a year it took for them to go in my past because I had moved around so much. I had like 20 some places that I had lived, you know, and this really funny thing, this little old man walked up to one of my apartments where I had been living at the time, and he says, who is this man, Mr. Anderson? And asked me a couple other different things that I mean, through the years, you know, you don't remember this guy and that person and family and this, and so I had to do my best to try and come up with where these people had lived and, you know, how to find them, because they had to do that background check. Well, then months went on months went on, and then finally I got a letter in the mail, I believe. I don't think I got a phone call. And they said that I had been hired and to come up to access control and go through my paperwork and stuff. And then another month or two span from there, and then I was to start in March of '82. So I started, and I was told that I had the choice to start with the union or with a non-union, and I had 30 days to make my choice. Well, I was a machinist, and machining, you had to be in the union. Well, of course, they took dues out the first month I was there. I had no choice. It's a closed shop. It was kind of funny to hear them, oh, you have a choice. And it's like, no, you don't have a choice. So, and that was the first union that I had ever been in, the United Steelworkers Union. And I had started over in building 444, which was the uranium area, and worked there for a couple months. And then they had
So you started, what was your position?
I started in at a green badge. I wasn't, I didn't have to go through any red badge, they call it red badge, pre-qualification to get your Q clearance. I had came in as a Q cleared worker and started as a journeyman machinist. And I was there only a couple months, and they had a polling come up for the 700 complex, which was the higher radiation elements, plutonium and what have you. So I went ahead and took that polling on days and went over there and started working there. And then
did that pay better?
I had I believe it was a 25-cent raise that was called hot pay, and that was for working under hard or adverse conditions, because you're working in glove boxes, and it was very tedious, and you had to have a lot of dexterity in a lot of circumstances, and you really had to deal with a lot of you had to be like a contortionist in some ways to be able to deal with working through gloves and picking up parts and changing tools and stuff, and it was really different from, you know, walking up to a machine and just turning it on and go. So that was hard to get used to, and I got used to that, and I had to go through a lot of testing and a lot of paperwork, you know, and a lot of stuff that I wasn't used to. My brain was just packed with all kinds of stuff, trying to learn their ways, and some of their ways were very antique. And yeah, and the plant was really behind in the ways of machining as far as tooling, that I had to back up a little bit and learn those certain ways because of the tooling that they had. It's too technical to get into, but that kind of slowed me down, and I had to rethink a lot of my methods and stuff to use, you know, because I was a journeyman, and I, you know, had to pull my weight, and I liked that. I didn't like leaning on on the foreman or crew leader, because they had enough problems with all the new people coming in there not knowing exactly everything, because they had pre-apprentices there that only knew, I'm going to call it for lack of another name, button pushing. They didn't know the machining and the years that I had had prior to coming at the plant. So I was pretty much on my own, which I liked, because I'm a very independent person, rather, when it comes to that. So then I started working real well and getting used to all that, and then in let's see, November of '82, I had a glove box leak on my coveralls.
How did that happen?
A gasket a glove box has glass lined with leaded sight ports, so you can see through to look in to see your tooling, to see your part, to basically do your job. You have to have these sight ports to look through. Well, the gasket had failed and had leaked on my coveralls without my knowledge. I'm talking about microscopic leaking. I'm talking about air. I'm talking about machine oil mist. Something that you really can't visually see right away.
Yeah.
So I was working and dealing with that, and they a couple times had shut that machine tool down, at least 2 times, because of that problem, because I had told them that I was having some adverse things happening with that. And they actually, let me back up a little bit, they had came to me and shut that machine down because they had apparently noticed something. Yeah. And there was a couple times I had to go elsewhere and work out of my building. I had to go to another building and work so they could, maintenance could fix that. Well, they fixed it a couple times, and prior to March of '82. And yeah, see, it's hard to trigger your brain, what, 25 years ago? And that incident, and then the incident happened in '82. Had leaked on my coveralls. I had went to the coffee room, break time, and the radiation monitors had came to the coffee room asking who just came in here. I said, well, I did. He says, what building? I was in 776. He goes, well, we just had a SAM alarm go off, which is a radiation monitor / americium indicator that sounds off different various ways, bells, and then it has a air monitors on it sampling, and those had gone off. Well, so I'm out. I had to get up and go out in the middle of this hallway and basically derobe down to my underwear, and they had to monitor me, hands and legs out, and they had to run their Geiger counter around my legs and arms and fingers and nose and mouth and everything else. And they took nose smears, and they took a couple other samples. Well, about a few months after that, I had got a report back that I did ingest a very small amount of plutonium / americium, and that I'm fine.
Now, how would you have ingested it?
I'm going to say nasal.
Okay.
It had to be more nasal. Like I say, it was microscopic, so it could be anywhere from opening your mouth to breathe, because you do that sometimes subconsciously, and you breathe through your nose, and your orifice is in your ears. So I think there's 3 easy ways to ingest.
And that was because the gasket leaked out of the glove box.
Right. The gasket, it was the shape of like back in the 70s when these kids had these custom vans that had these glass ports on the back of the vans, and they were fancy, and they were a real thick rubber gasket. Well, it was that kind of gasket that had failed. And so then I went through what was called a body counter, and it monitors you for, I believe it was a half hour, monitors your DPMs, which is disintegrations per minute.
What does that look like? Can you describe it?
Oh,
What does it feel like?
It feels like you're on a cadaver board, literally, with at least 4 seismic slash air slash who knows what other kind of monitors were on you. I don't know. It was way beyond me what I could figure out what this contraption was. It was pretty scary looking to first come in there and get on this board and have all the and have all this stuff gradually ease down to you. It was about 4 times worse than an MRI. Yeah. I mean, this is real detailed monitoring. State of the art, concrete, lead encased. You walk in and
so you're in there all by yourself.
Right, you're in there all by yourself. The door's shut. It's like a restaurant refrigerator type situation where that door is shut, you know, except for 1.5 to 2 feet thick. Luckily I wasn't claustrophobic. You know, it was kind of impressive. Like, wow, these guys are really going to take care of me. So I was quite at ease, thinking, okay, good, I'm glad I'm having this expertise, you know, going through all this and stuff. And then, so I went through that and went back to my job, started working the next day. I don't remember if I went back that day to my machine. I forget exactly what happened that day. I was pretty shook up. Then I had to...
but they told you that you had ingested, but it was nothing to worry about?
Yes, that I had ingested a small amount of plutonium / americium.
Okay.
And that there was nothing to worry about, and that I would get a internal memo stating such through the plant. And I did. And it basically said the same thing. And then I was told to go through UA sampling for, I believe it was a week. Every day to have a UA taken.
That would be
a urinalysis.
Okay.
And I believe it was only one day, it may have been up to 3 days, I had to take a fecal sampling that was put in. It looked just like a milk carton, and it was sent to the labs. I forget what it was called. It was the labs, you know, for that type of stuff. And I did that, and the paperwork. When I got the paperwork through the internal mail, that it did say that there was a small amount of radiation in the fecal and UA. But it was okay, it was safe. And I have the report still, which I'm sure they weren't counting on me keeping for 25, 30 years. Well, when it comes to stuff like that, I'm a pack rat. And that's just the way I think. When it's got something to do with me, I keep it. Not knowing why, have any idea if I'd ever need it. I just, for some reason, the Lord told me, keep it. So I did. Well, so I kept on working, and then something happened with the job pulling, and they shut down a shift. And at that time I didn't have much seniority. So I was bumped out of there, and I had to go back to either building 444, which was uranium, or I could go to this new building, which was 881, and it was stainless. Well, I'd had enough of glove boxes anyway, so I went ahead. I went to the stainless area because that was my cup of tea. Because I had done that at the job shops in Denver and Inglewood and all over. So I went back to there and really enjoyed working. Everything was going good. Started getting a lot of seniority. Was able to get back on days again and a whole day shift. And lots of overtime but I pretty much kept to my own self. I had just went through a divorce shortly after I had started 881. I had got divorced, So pretty much kept to myself. Is there anything else that you would like to know?
I was wondering, you say you pretty much kept to yourself. Did you feel like, how would you characterize working there in general? I mean, were people, some people have said to me like it's kind of like a family, and other people say...
Yeah, it is. It is family oriented, but you also have to cover your back. You gotta watch yourself. A lot of other trades were, I'm gonna say, jealous because of machinists were almost the top labor grade. We were, back in 82, I had hired on at $11.53 an hour. That was a lot of money back then. So there was a lot of jealous people just waiting to try and get you in trouble, or to have something called up on the union that you would have to respond to, or if you were working out of your if you worked out of your classification, there was repercussions on that. You couldn't mop a floor because the custodians would come and file a grievance on you for that. It was kind of childish and petty because it was a union, and I had never worked for a union before. So there was certain things I did have to get used to. Just their quid pro quo, I guess,
Yeah.
But like I say, I was learning so much and so enjoyed coming to work. I just loved coming to work. It was such a thrill to
Even
come.
when you were working in the glove box.
Oh yeah, it was still a thrill to come to work because it was just all new to me. It was like being a child, being reborn, because it was a different atmosphere. I was working for Uncle Sam. And
How did that feel to you?
very proud. I was very proud, and I had complete trust that I was being taken care of to the max. I didn't have to worry about anything when it came down to equipment, tools. We weren't allowed to bring our own toolbox on plant site. My tools sat in my bedroom, for almost 10 years. That was hard to get used to. It's like for a woman in her kitchen not being able to use her own pot and pan. Well, I had these expert precision, close tolerance machinist tools that were sitting in the bedroom gathering dust. So that was real hard to get used to. Hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of stuff, but I got over that. And they had a lot of diversified type of machining that I didn't ever have a chance to see and work with before basically because of cost. I mean, they had machinery there that was millions and millions of dollars, just one piece of machinery that I, had my hands on. That was my machine, and that was quite nice and quite, I felt like, I'm really happy that they're trusting me with this type of stuff, and this stuff that they were bringing in. We had classification that was called clerk packers, and they would take the tubs of parts and bring them to our machine, and we'd have paperwork that we'd have to fill out and sign our name to, and those numbers would go on that part. This is your part, you made this part. So we had to sign off each part. It was quite detailed, you know, because these are very expensive parts. And that was scary, you know, but I'm glad that they did that on a couple reasons, because I didn't want to have to worry about somebody else's junk that I would be called on for, you know. So that was,
would be that you would never be blamed for
somebody else's, mistakes. And we had never followed suit with that down in any job shop. You never did it. I mean, it was laser etching or whatever kind of etching they had right on the part number. George did this part number, blah blah, you know. You know, and there was a lot of paperwork, a lot of meetings, a lot of testing, different areas. Each area you go into, you had to do testing for. If you were in radiation, you had to go through glove box training, you know. And I wasn't used to that. I was not a bookworm. I mean, I just skated by in high school. I did what I had to do, and that was it. I didn't like, you know, I was just a hands-on person. And but yeah, you know, and all these other people started bidding into other areas like inspection and management, and we lost quite a few machinists all of a sudden. You know, they're bidding out because they hadn't bid in the trade, and they didn't realize what they got into.
I see.
It's not a piece of cake.
Yeah. Now, before we started this, we were talking about John Cash, that you worked with him.
Yeah, I had worked at, Johnny was my crew leader in building 776 at the time of the incident in '82. He was also a crew leader. And he was, a few machines away from me. I really never spoke specifically to him about the incident. He just told me what to do and where to go, and that was about it, you know. And my contact was with my foreman on that end, and John was in the union, so he was just doing his thing, and then being a crew leader to help the new people that came on and get them familiar with some of the stuff. And then he stayed there. He had super seniority. So when I left 700 complex, you know, he was still there. And after I went back over to 81, I kind of lost contact with all the other guys in 700 that I work with, because that place is huge. It's like a city. I mean, there was 5,000 some people there. It's a city of its own. See, where was I? I was in 81 machining.
Did you?
I don't know.
Did you
what
worry after the incident? Was it something always in your mind, or did you sort of put it out of your mind?
I would ask around, and I wouldn't get much input on it, because either people had no idea what was going on, or management wouldn't discuss it because of, you know, I understand why that was not their expertise, and I would ask someone that's in management, and they would just shrug their shoulders and say, "Oh, you'll be fine," and that's it. You know, it happens a lot, blah blah. You know. Well, I was what, 26 years old. You know, I was still a kid. I was like, my life's in their hands. I had no idea really what was going on. I pretty much took their word that I'd be fine. And my foreman, before I had left 700 Complex, Bob Wagner, he had said, "George, don't worry, this has happened before to other people. They'll take good care of you." Well, when I left there and went over to Stainless, shortly thereafter, Bob Wagner had died. Yeah, he died. I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I believe it was some kind of cancer had got him. He was, back in the 80s, he was probably in his 50s, possibly hitting 60. And he'd been there for probably since the plant opened.
Now, the ingesting is very different from experiences that people have with getting contaminated. Is that right? Or
Yeah.
what's the difference really, if you could explain that?
When you ingest like I did, it is different than getting contaminated in the physical sense of touching something that has oil on it and getting it on your skin and having it be on your hand and become direct count, which means it's there forever, 24,000 year half-life. Sometimes a Kim wipe with soap and water on it, you can wipe it, clean your hand off, put a Geiger counter on it or whatever they call those, their monitors, and then there's nothing. 2 days afterwards, you could run it back there and it'll give you a reading. So plutonium and radiation in general is very mystical. It's something that probably nobody will ever know exactly what radiation really is. Everybody scoffed at it. They made jokes about it. I had one incident where I had to go out of my classification to go to a module and decon it. And we're up on these plenum tubes that are probably 16-inch diameters, 10 feet up in the air, deconning this room. And it was a module. And we were in full face masks, and these other workers that I had to work with were taking these Kim wipes after they were cleaning this machinery off and throwing it at each other. That right there told me, whoa, these people are careless. They have no idea what's going on. They have been told something. They were totally underestimating what's going on because of stupidity or whatever you want to call it. That was another reason that I probably now just think that I had probably decided to get out of the 700 complex, was probably one of those reasons, is because of that. Because I was flabbergasted. I could not believe that these people were being careless. Because, I mean, I didn't know that much about it, but I knew that that was pretty stupid to do something like that. You know, and I don't know, I have my own ideas about stuff like that, and I don't really want to give my opinion because of what I think now is, now that I'm sick and having troubles trying to prove that it had anything to do with the plant site. But you can't tell me that that was not one of the problems that they had, was lack of education on it. At that time they had really didn't tell anybody any more than they needed to know on what they were doing and building there. And it really upsets me that I had to deal with that, and I was in the union, and you can't file on your union brother, you know, because that's your brother, you know. And
so you couldn't, if you saw something that you considered to be unsafe, you couldn't have filed on it for a fellow union person.
Right. Or be tarred and feathered if you did, basically. So I let it go, you know, and then I'm sure, like I said before, that was probably one of the reasons I left 700. And there was a lot of people upset. because later on I could have went back there as I started getting my seniority, because there was still a lot of attrition happening at that time, and each month I was starting to get some really good seniority.
I see. When you
Yeah.
say people were upset, I mean, they wanted you to come back?
Yeah.
Because
They-
you were skilled?
Right, I was already totally trained in glove box work. I didn't have to take any tests. I had all my badges. I was in the fire brigade. I was set. And that meant a lot back then, because they didn't have, that was one less person they had to babysit. Well, yeah, you know, I understand that too, but hey, I'm not going to go over there after having an incident like that happen to me, and then have a bunch of kids that are supposed to be doing their jobs throwing chem wipes at you and acting like a bunch of little babies. And just other little things. It was a real clique over in 700, even more so than a small town, because you're dealing with people's lives, which I had no idea back then.
And when you say 700, do you mean 770, the whole 700 complex?
The whole
Or
700
building?
complex, yeah, there was many buildings that all started with the number 7.
Right, okay.
700 complex was,
All of those.
yeah, but it was a combination of 3 or 4 modules stuck together, and then the pre-700 complex was 776, 777. These were the old buildings back in '69 that had caught fire, and they had a big to-do about that back then. Well, I had just been assigned to work in the 776 building that had had the fire in 1969. At that time, I had no idea. Of course, they weren't going to tell you that. So, yeah, you know, I have some hidden angers about stuff like that, and why they held things back from you, and they allowed horseplay more than they should have, you know. But I tried to deal with it and just go on about my own way and do my own thing and produce good quality parts. That's all I cared about.
And when you moved to the 81,
Yeah.
did you feel that that would be safer?
Yeah, you know, it was open area, it was open machining,
It's not a plutonium.
not plutonium area. You know, it was,
What were you doing there, if you're at liberty to say?
well, I was running lathe, machine tools, which are called lathes and mills and grinders and threading machines, and computerized and manual, both. I was doing it all. Quite happy to be back in my element, that I didn't have to worry about wearing a respirator all day, because the building was a little bit too hot to be in without a respirator on. Then they would go to a half mask, and half masks were okay, but they were cumbersome, and just, you know, I don't know if you've ever worn something like that, but it's hard to wear all day long and have to produce a quality part or do paperwork. It's always in the way. It is claustrophobic in some ways, you
It's
know.
cumbersome. Is it hot, too?
Yeah, hot, you know. But in those areas that required half mask, full face, supplied air, whatever you had to wear, you didn't have to literally be in them for 8 hours a day. You do one operation and then come out into the office or into the room and take a break and wait for your part to get out of inspection, and then go back and machine another one, and you know, and it broke up the day pretty easily. I mean, it wasn't a sweatshop by any means. They were good at that. Good. They understood that it was really difficult.
When did you begin to experience some kind of symptoms or worries about being ill?
Before I knew I was sick, back in '88. I was throwing up a lot, not knowing why, at work, at home. Nausea, just things like that. Just thinking it was just nerves or stress or whatever. And then in 89, around there, around the 1st of 89, I had went to the hospital and had got checked out because it was starting to really bother me. And then I was diagnosed for spastic colon. That's why you're having stomach pain. That's why you're throwing up sometimes. This and that and the other. It's like, oh, okay. So they gave me their medication for that. Dealt with that. Still throwing up. Still having a lot of nausea. And months went by putting up with that. And that's about when I got married to Terrie. And we had went through that with Lutheran Hospital. She went through that with me at Lutheran Hospital. Went through that with Kaiser Permanente. We went around and around with these doctors and hospitals. Why am I throwing up? Well, having no luck. So I believe that was when we were living in Lakewood, but we weren't having any luck with going anywhere really to get help. And we just happened to look one day in the phone book and saw this little doctor's office, little in the corner of this shopping center, this little old man, and decided to take a chance on going over there and seeing what if he could help us, you know, because I had Kaiser Permanente and that was my insurance, and I really couldn't afford to go to a big whoop-de-doo doctor down in Denver or anything. So we went there, and he picked it up right away. I had acute gallbladder disease. And then I had nuclear medicine done. At that time, I wasn't diagnosed with gallbladder disease, but that's in essence what happened. And so he took me through, I think he knew.
He took it seriously.
Yeah. He knew I wasn't goofing around. So he gave me an injection that day in my hip, and that really helped, you know, and then set up some appointments for me to go to for nuclear medicine, and I think I took some other test. I think it was an ultrasound, but you know that they're not really that good for. They give you some things, but it was the nuclear medicine that had caught everything that was going on, and they had found 2 or more gallstones. And at this time I was, 30 years old, gallstones. Like, okay, so set up an appointment and got all squared away with that. At Lutheran Hospital, I'm going to have this gallbladder surgery. Well, I went ahead and have it, and it was going to be that, I believe it was a laserectomy or something, where they pull the gallbladder right through your belly button. Day and a half, boom, you're out of there, good to go, back working again. Well, I wake up that day of the surgery and find this 1.5-foot scar on my stomach, and they had to have radical gallbladder surgery. They had to rip me open and get that gallbladder out because it had burst in the doctor's hands. I almost died. 104, 105 temperature. I don't think I would have lasted another week. If that little old man in that shopping center wouldn't have caught that, I'd been gone. That's scary.
Yeah.
Then from there on, I had nothing but troubles. Every time I turn around, something would happen. Something would come up, this or that or the other.
Were you at this point thinking, I mean, were you linking this in any way to the incident?
No. I wasn't relating, at that time I was not relating anything to Rocky Flats at all. Just like, okay, you know, no big deal. Not knowing, you know, 30-year-old person doesn't have gallbladder surgery. I had no idea. Because I was kind of naive in that area, you know. I was like, I was a worker and just wanted to go out and do my job and get back to work. So then about the middle of '89, Terrie and I decided we wanted to move on and you know, to get out of Rocky Flats, and gave them my notice. It's like, I'm going to be leaving plant site. It's time to move on. And this happened around July of '89. And I had had my vested rights in the company, and I'm all squared away for that, for retirement at regular retirement age and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went, looked in the newspapers and had my jobs here and there, and back in my job shops, and I kept getting laid off everywhere because the economy was just awful. And found an ad here up in Craig to work in a machine shop rebuilding longwall and drag lighting equipment for the coal mines. So I came up here, and it was about 91, somewhere around there. And
so, in other words, you left Rocky Flats just for, because you wanted to move on?
yeah, I'd had
Were there
enough.
any particular reasons?
I was tired of the union. I was tired of dealing with all the paperwork. I was tired of a lot of different things. We were tired of Denver. It was just time to get out and move on. I had went through a stage 2 grievance with union over, back in '88, around that time, maybe '87, we had switched from inches to metric. The whole plant had to go metric. Well, I had never used metric system before, and a lot of the inspection had never used metric before. They gave us all metric instruments, and you would not believe the difference in a metric instrument. There, you could look at it 3 different times and get a different reading each time. Well, that happened. I had set this part up, ran this part, took it to inspection because we were required to inspect these parts on the setup, no matter what. You do not run any parts until you get that part back from inspection. So I gave it to the inspector, came back, good to go, which was a black 1. That meant your part's good, go ahead and run production. So I did. And there was over 20 parts I was running. And I thought, you know, just being there that long, I thought, okay, you know, I like inspecting like every other 5th part, something like that. So I'd sent in another part around that 5th, 6th time. Comes back, black 1, good to go, keep on machining. A couple days go by. I come in and call to the foreman's office, and he puts down this tray of parts, and he says, "Did you make these parts?" I look through the travelers, and he, "Yeah." "Well, they're all scrap." I go, "Oh, really?" So I kept looking through the travelers, and I was like, it's not what inspection said. Got these parts inspected 2, 3 different times. Says they're all good. Well, they're not. They're all scrap. So you have a step 2 union grievance with the company, Rockwell International, and report their access control, blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I turned sheep white. I was like, I had no idea what was going on, what stage 2 was. I had never been, you know, I never had any troubles. I don't scrap parts. Sure enough, they were scrap, and I misread misread the mics, and the inspector misread the mics. It's like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do. It's on the inspectors. That's what do you do? So I won.
So you, I was going to say, if anyone was to blame
It was
final analysis, he was.
quality
I mean,
control.
That was his job to
That was
double check.
last chance, last word,
Right, yeah.
acceptance. It was accepted. Every time I took that part there is accepted. So I won, of course. Well, that really pissed off a bunch of people, management.
I see.
You know, and luckily they weren't big, huge, very expensive parts. They were just little bitty parts. But you know how government runs. I mean, it still, even though part was smaller than a remote for a VCR, it was still probably worth hundreds of dollars. You know, but I covered my ass, and I did what the print said, and I did what inspection said, and this and that, and so anyway, I won. I won my grievance. Didn't have to have any kind of problems, you know, coming from that. But they were watching me like a hawk, and that went on for years. After that, you know, once something like that happens, you're watched and watched and watched. Well, I started feeling it, and that's probably one of the reasons why I quit. Pressure, you know, I bid off onto a night shift job, and the same foreman that was on days would bid off on and go on nights and follow me around, and it's like, and I was not paranoid. This man, everywhere I bid out to get away from, he was there. So I knew right away that management was watching me, because everywhere I went, he just ended up being there. And I can't prove that, you know, but I knew in my own mind that I was being harassed. So it's like, okay, I'm out of here. So I did. And then, you know, and that's when that's when I got, you know, that gallbladder problem and all that, and then we moved out of Denver and moved up here and started working here, and then I started getting even sicker. And
When did you start putting it together with the experience of ingesting the plutonium? Or I guess it would be plutonium and americium.
yeah, they're brother and sister.
Yeah.
And that's a tough question.
Did doctors ever, you know, help you put that together?
No,
Uh-huh.
no. I was going through many different medical offices between Denver and here, and I had really never dawned on me to bring up anything about I had an ingestion, ingested this, ingested that. I didn't start really relating all this stuff until 6 or more things started going wrong with me at once. I mean, I let this stuff build up and build up and build up, and we're sitting here looking at all this stuff, and all of a sudden, how come I'm getting all sick all of a sudden? And I'd like to ask my wife part of this, if she could trigger my brain on some of this. Terrie, do you have any idea of,
Yes, I do.
of when maybe that the onset we started thinking about some of the reasons why this would happen?
Chronic atrophic gastritis. When you were diagnosed with that, we had a fight. Okay, I went to the library because I'm thinking gastritis, oh, a bellyache, he's got more than a bellyache. Looked it up, found out that it is related to ingesting radiation. And that was 95, I believe, is when we first realized that a lot of his illnesses can be attributed to ingestion and inhalation. He does have a lung burden also.
So you did the research at the library and found that there was a correlation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a lot more, but that's when we first realized that there was a correlation. And not every one of his diseases is linked. I mean, there's certain things that we just don't happen, but a lot of his diseases are related to his burden.
Yeah, we're not talking about, having a hangnail here or hangnail there. I'm talking about all the lipomas that I have and the giant cell tumors that I have in my foot, and your red light's beeping.
Uh-huh. We have about just 2 or 3 more minutes on this tape, and then we'll change it.
Okay. We're talking about the big things, the tumors, the lipomas, the chronic atrophic gastritis, which is directly related to a chemical or radiation ingestion. That is strictly what got us going, and we started researching, why do I have this? And
When did you were not able to continue work here in Craig?
I wasn't able to pull 40-hour weeks, and I just kept going on the best I could, and I had talked to some of the people that I'd worked with, say, hey, I'm sick, I can't do 40 hours, can I do 32, can I do 30, and I had cooperation with a lot of the places, and they worked with me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just kept getting sicker and sicker and sicker. All kinds of stuff started happening to me. And right now, as it sits, I'd have to go get this list of things that are wrong with me. That's how many things are wrong with me. I have more things wrong with me than a 60-year-old person. And I'm not even 50 yet. And a lot of these things happened to me when I was early 40s.
Well, can you tell me anything about what you have been doing to get some kind of compensation, if you've done anything?
That's a sore subject.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to reverse that tape.
Actually, why don't we stop and change the tape now?
Okay. Yeah.
And take a couple of minutes break.
Okay. Sure.
Take a break. This is a continuation of the oral history with George Barrie, and his wife Terrie has joined us. And I wondered if you could tell a little bit about your experience with workmen's compensation.
I can answer that probably the best. When George applied for Social Security, we had asked his lawyer if it would be a good idea to file for workers' comp, and she nodded her head yes, without giving any kind of verbal commitment. So we did that. It was a simple thing, filed his paper, and it ended up to be such a fiasco.
This would have been after he became ill.
Yes, in 1995 is when we filed for his chronic atrophic gastritis. We wanted reimbursement for his diagnostics and his medicine, which was running like $150 a month. And since the gastritis is a pre-cancer, it's, if he developed stomach cancer, we would want that kind of covered also. So the whole bill really wasn't that much, like $2,000. They spent, Travelers Insurance and Rockwell International contested it. They did all kinds of shenanigans, spent over $50,000 fighting this claim. We obviously lost due to preponderance of evidence. It was a mess. And
in that claim, was your experience with the ingestion of plutonium an aspect of the claim?
it was, yes, George had a piece of paper when we married. He showed it to me. He said, Terrie, if I ever get sick, take this to workers' comp. You and the kids will be taken care of if I die. It was the original incident report that reported him ingesting and inhaling plutonium and americium in '82. And that was not enough to convince the judge. You would think that that's all you needed. We have the incident. He has this disease, which we have found to be directly as far as we're concerned, not by law, responsible for his stomach condition. And they fought it and fought it and fought it. And to this day, we're still fighting it.
I see.
The Department of Energy back in 1999 admitted that workers can get sick from working at their facilities. Subtitle D of that act is responsible for claimants who do not have cancer. Okay? And that Subtitle D says DOE is responsible for presenting the cases to a panel of physicians. If the majority of the panel finds in favor of the claimant, then DOE will assist the claim or the worker in filing for state workers' compensation. From what I understand and what I've heard from other advocates around the country, the insurance companies are contesting the claims. There are numerous cases in Alaska, for instance, that they are going through exactly what I and George went through years ago with this contesting. Thousands and thousands of dollars are being sent to fight these claims.
I see. So, George, now, you have not received any compensation then under that new, relatively new bill, compensation?
No, I didn't receive anything from workers' comp. I haven't received anything from Subtitle D. I also machined beryllium at Rocky Flats, but I was always so careful what I was doing. I never had any incidents occur there, but yet I am on CPAP, which is an air breathing system that nobody knows why I have to be on. I've been diagnosed with acute obstructive apnea. I think there's also hyperpoxemia or hypo.
Yes, his oxygen levels get extremely low, sometimes below 90, where the normal range is 96 to 100.
But yet my BE test that was taken through blood,
The beryllium.
the beryllium test, says that I don't have enough. I was sensitive to it, beryllium, one day, but the levels are acceptable for all the other days. It goes on a different scale. It's not DPMs. It's
I don't know exactly
I don't
what
remember
those...
exactly what it was, but it was air particles per volume or per minute or something. I don't remember, but yeah, they were deemed acceptable.
How would you say that your health problems affect your life now?
Oh, day to day. Sometimes, like I'll help Terrie clean the house a little bit, and I'm fine. And then the next time I give her a hand doing something, or go to the store and come back, I'm down for a day, 2 days, just total fatigue, total lethargy. I feel like I'm 70 years old. I can barely get up out of the couch, get up out of bed. I just got to drag myself everywhere. And then other days you can't keep up with me. It's really strange. It doesn't seem to have a pattern.
Are you able to work now?
No, I've already tried, because living up here, I know a lot of people, and I've tried to do things with other people, but 2-3 hours I gotta leave and come home, because I really miss working.
Yeah.
I mean, I've been a worker since 1969. I worked since I was 14 years old, and then all of a sudden I'm not working. But recently, in the past 3 years, I haven't been able to do anything as far as work. Yeah.
And that's very sad, because he is a worker. He'll watch a show on TV and see something. I can make that. I wish I can get back into machining. 2 years ago, when the disaster happened on 9/11, the first thing out of his mouth after the shock wore off is, "I wonder if the government will need me." He wants to go back to work that much.
Yeah, it's so, if you catch me in the wrong time, I'll be watching a TV show like that, and I'll just break down in tears because I can't work. That's how much I miss working. But there's no way I could go over there to anywhere. I prior to me getting disability, I tried going to Kmart to work stocking shelves. I couldn't even do that. I mean, this is what tells me that this is not normal. I should not be this. I'm not going to call it sick. I should not be this disabled. I'm, you know, there's difference between being sick, whether I have like, for example,
It's not like having the flu.
yeah, or it's not like having asthma. It's like having no energy and not being able to stand up for any length of time. I can't even sit on the couch for any length of time. You know, and I'm starting to get so bad that my legs are losing blood flow and they'll go numb on me. It's getting that bad, and I've got to really watch that because I'm going to start having troubles with blood clot stuff and stuff like that, and the doctors are telling me, you know, you need to keep active, and I believe them now, because if I were to stay idle for a week or so, I bet you I'd become bedridden.
Yeah.
And I'm not ready for that yet. You know, and I really see where these people at these rest homes and old folks places, I can see exactly why they go. It's because they stay in one spot for a length of time, and that just deteriorates them, you know, and I seem to be in an accelerated type situation where I can feel it. Say I'm down for 2 days, I can feel my whole body shut down because of the strength in my arms is gone, the strength in my legs is gone. I can't think straight. I'm out of it. So I got to force myself to get up and move and motivate, and even if it's dusting off my stereo or helping her put dishes away or something like that, anything, and that's scary. You know, not even, I just turned 48 and I'm disabled now. It's like, what? What do you mean? You know, and it's really hard to deal with. It just really is.
He's in constant pain,
Yeah.
which was not mentioned earlier. There's, they had his neck collapsed on him. He had osteoporosis, and he does not smoke, never did smoke, of his neck. He's in a lot of pain, not just the stomach.
Neck fusion in 1998. I had to have vertebrae fused. It's like, it's
I
just,
remember that Janet Brown said something about your bones were collapsing.
Yeah.
I didn't really understand what that meant. but-
I know, and it is funny, you know, when you think about it. It's like, what do you mean your bones are collapsing? But all my muscular tissue is going away in my joints, and I've got acute arthritis in more than 2 places. And it's just like, all this stuff is like a doppelganger. It just keeps multiplying, and it's like.
Now, are your medical expenses at this point being paid for by your former Rocky Flats?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Zip. I've tried to get compensation from my vested rights in the company, and I have to be, I think it's 55 to receive anything. There's a list on the back of the piece of paper, A through like E, and one of them indicates lump sum. I've discussed that with the people, and they won't even talk to me about it. They just like almost hang up on me. It's like, you know, so I don't even know if I'm gonna even ever get that, period. I've never received any kind of help, any kind of compensation from anybody except SSDI. And I had to fight for that. I had to go to court to get that. Took what, 4 years to
4
even,
years. 4 years and 2
you know,
claims.
and that was just to catch up for the years that I was off, so we could get back on our feet to pay our rent. You know, I have, it's really something. I mean, going from $15 an hour to $12,000 a year, big difference. And that's right there, people should understand, damn right I want to go to work. $15 an hour machining trade, I'm looking at $2,500 to $3,000 a month that I have to give up because I can't do it. That right there should tell people that I'm not faking it, because I want to get out there and make money, but I can't. I hope that the right people see some of this stuff, some of this interviews from some of these other workers and myself, and see what we're going through. And just, you can't make up stuff like this. That would be way too hard to make up. You know, and it's like, come on guys, you gotta help and understand where we're coming from. And we don't want a handout. We just want people to understand.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. As you look back at working at Rocky Flats, I mean, what do you think was the best thing about working there?
Best thing about working there,
Or the best things?
it just really increased my knowledge of my skill threefold. There's no doubt about that. But and the income per year, you know, almost doubled. But now that I look back at it, I wish I would have stayed at that job for $7 an hour in Inglewood machining. I mean, to give up this at my age now and have to deal with all these doctor bills and paying almost $500 a month for my medications that I have to have each month. It's not even an option. I mean, I wish I could. You know how it goes. Hindsight is always.
You said that earlier you felt like you were being taken care of, and I gathered that you also had a lot of pride in working.
Oh, I had
for
a whole lot of pride. I was so proud to work there, and very much in the American way of thinking. Like, there was nothing that could have gotten my way back then, you know. I mean, I could have taken on the world. I was that proud of serving my country, and glad that I was doing that, because I didn't enjoy the Navy as I thought I would. Because I wanted to get in machining when I went to the Navy, and I wasn't allowed to. They had to put me in electronics, and you know, I didn't care for that. And I finally got into the thing that I wanted to do at Rocky Flats, or thereabouts. I had two choices to go, to Rocky Flats or to Martin Marietta. Well, Rocky Flats had called me first, you know, and that's where that came from. And that, I guess this is just the coin that flipped that I had to take. I don't know. I don't understand why the Lord had to put me through this, but I guess.
Did you ever have any, did you have any thoughts about working with nuclear weapons? I mean, how did you think about that?
Well, I thought the government or Uncle Sam or whoever knew what they were doing, but I don't think that anybody knows enough about radiation in this whole world. Seeing all of these things happening from the 80s up to now, 2003, I don't think anybody in this world really knows what radiation is, because I keep hearing horror stories about it. Not only Rocky Flats, everywhere. I think it was the worst thing that man could have ever had put on this planet, and it's here to stay. It'll never, I mean, even if they quit producing it, which I don't see, our society is geared for it, whether it's a power plant or weaponry to protect the country with. It's here forever. And I hope that someday that we can contain it and help other sick people like myself. I know that I'm sure that they probably didn't realize either back in the 50s what they came up with from Madame Curie.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, what do you do?
Is there anything else either one of you think, should, might be important to be in other people to know about, maybe years from now?
I can't think of anything right offhand. I agree with what George just said. It's a very, very dangerous thing to mess around with. I wish I didn't know what I know through all my research. I wish I lived in this nice little isolated area, but you read about the Rocky Flats workers. In the past year, there was 22 exposed. The people in Los Alamos, they've had accidents there. There's accidents in Oak Ridge. And I honestly do worry about those folks in 15, 20 years because they're getting the same spin that these guys did. Oh, you'll be fine. We'll take care of you.
And they're not going to know what hit them.
And they're not going to know.
I don't know about you, but I've been Catholic all my life, and I believe that the Lord has saved my life more than once. And there's a reason for me going through this, and I believe that He has something to do with it. And I hope that this ends up in His archive on what to help, what to help this society. Oh my God. I mean, I can see, I am so glad that when my dog is giving me problems right now, lay down. I am so glad that we have the technology, weapon-wise, to take care of these lunatics from Pakistan and Israel. Afghanistan and this Gulf War that we went through. Rocky Flats was a nuclear trigger facility, but that doesn't mean it's just nuclear triggers. We did a lot of stuff for a lot of different things in a lot of different ways. That's all I can say. But I can't see throwing a stick of dynamite at somebody. We have to have these weapons set up right so we can blow up these bunkers that are 2,000 feet underground, and you can't do that with the technology back in World War I and that. And I'm glad for that part, but it's a worse or evil, and there's got to be a better solution than blowing this world up about 5 times over. And that's what we're doing, is we're taking every piece of this earth and blowing it up, and there's got to be a stop to it. But now we got all these madmen going on across the oceans. What do you do? So I feel really sorry for the president and the government, because they're probably at a loss just as much as we are.
Yeah.
But nuclear is not the way to go. But then you got China. They can't wait to build. They can't wait to say, we got it. And that's another whole mess. See what I'm saying about the Lord, how it's all coming down. And I really don't know anything more that I can add to my story. But God help us.
Well, I think you've told a very complete story, and really appreciate it.
You bet.
Well, thank you for driving up.
Yeah.
It's,
I think I'll stop.
Thank you.
okay.
This is a listing of George Barrie's illnesses and conditions.
which he and his wife Terrie gave to me, and I'll just get closer so that you can see some of the listings closer. These have all been diagnosed in the last few years. So that they're current. And okay, that's the end of this.